40 of the world's most innovative thinkers were gathered to form the Synthesis Group.
I've been dreaming about this for 2 years.
The people that are called to be here are each doing wonderful work in the world.
The goal of synthesis, in whatever small way we can, is to assist in the emergence of a prevailing consciousness that protects the weak while honoring the strong, and that will assure the health of the earth for all future generations.
The Synthesis Group is to travel to India and meet with the Dalai Lama.
The Dalai Lama reaches safety on Indian soil after a 14-day trek across the Himalayas. Exiled from his country and people, the Dalai Lama remains a symbol of faith to millions.
Each human being have the moral responsibility to think about humanity and to think about future.
Here we are going through India with all its beauty and its squalor and its inexplicable mystery.
Even be on a train, I felt nauseous.
It really was a hard trip.
And to be on a 12-hour bus ride like that.
Bouncing around, never knowing quite what we were doing and who was supposed to be leading us.
The pain was exquisite.
But all the trauma of getting here somehow melts away as we arrive.
The pilgrimage to transform the world.
I don't think anything like this has ever been done.
More and more people begin to feel there is something wrong. So such as a conference may find some sort of practical way or method to address these problems. The answer must come from collective effort.
There's always a way that you can work around evil, but I'm having a sense that there's a call to confront evil in our time.
On global level, my nation first, my religion first, humanity come later. Main purpose of our gathering is long-term strategy, how to promote basic human value.
Renaissance, a new birth.
There's a world that you can radically affect. You have been given a blessing. The gift you've been given is the opportunity to transform the heart within you. Take this opportunity to open your heart.
I personally, I think the reason why I have sort of the interest or commitment in these in such work or such conference is each human being have the responsibility or moral responsibility to think about humanity, to think about future of human being. As my own sort of share, I always trying to promote basic human values. That is, another word, as I mentioned earlier, the human spirit, the sense of caring one another, and to consider other just like myself, have the same right, same desire, emotionally or mentally, physically, all human beings same. And of course, from the Buddhist viewpoint, other sentient beings also, they have the same right. But now today, here now we are talking about mainly the human being. These basic human value is is very important for happy life. In order to have happy family, happy individual person, happy sort of human society or humanity, human world. These basic values are very important. Without that, you can't be a happy person. That's clear. So this is one thing. The second, now here, then second, the promotion of religious harmony among the different religious traditions. In both these two things, I feel very much related with education, the way of education, the way of educate. So education system very much involved. Then media, then of course religious persons or many people. I think all the different sort of part of human society, you see, have important role according one's own profession fields. So, now of course my knowledge, on detail or practical method, my knowledge is very limited. I think I can see vaguely about if you see this trend, presence of trend, just to see regardless the basic human value, just to see thinking about power or money, things like that, then the weaker section always suffer. Result, more trouble in the society. And also, I think, too much exploitation about the nature resources. That's also dangerous. And I think our concept, they mainly, I think, in the industrialized nations, you see, there, I think the concept about the every year your sort of income must increase, as if you believe nature resources are limitless. Meantime, poor people, some other part of the world, their basic sort of requirement also not adequate. Some cases, starvation. So these are not only morally wrong, but practically also these are source of problem. So we need some. I feel there are signs, whether in East or whether in Japan or whether in America, in Europe, in many places. Now more and more people now sort of, I think, begin to feel there is something wrong. We need some new sort of effort or new sort of, I think, way to go. New way, I think, new approach. So there are, just, I feel, quite a number of people, I think, have the same sort of, sharing the same view. But then, at least for me, you see, how to implement, I don't know. My knowledge is very limited. So, such as a conference, people from different field, and I think more or less, I think different sort of object or view, sort of, I think same view, same view, but it's a different background, and they come together, talk, discuss, and frank discussions. They analyze the situation. That will be very, very useful. Me personal also, very helpful to get deeper awareness and may find some sort of practical way or method or way of approach to address these problems. So that's why I'm rather excited to participate and to listen. Sometimes people, some people, you see, they rather sort of eager to find some my thought or my view, and then perhaps I think some unrealistic expectation. That is wrong. That is sometimes a little disturbed for me. I just is what I always feel I'm another sort of member of the conference, just as one participant. So I'm very sort of eager and willing to make a contribution, my own sort of belief or my own views. That at the same time, this is not the answer. Just is making a contribution. The answer must find or must come from collective effort. There's Tibetan saying, it is more useful or more, better views come through not very smarted sort of, not very smarted 100 people's sort of discussion, than very smarted one single person. I think that's very true. Clear. One very sort of, I think the great thinker or great sort of intellectual person, one person, and then not so smart, 100%. because of, you see, the number or more number. So their better idea come from 100 people. They are smart, their brain not so smart. So that's, I think, very true, very true. So you see, each participant, I think one provided should be very sincere motivation. Not making just sort of nice sort of statement or things like that. No, not that way. Or some other aim, money or fame or propaganda. Not like that, but just sincerely. You see, trying to find out the root cause of our today's problem and whether there's a remedy or not. If there's no remedy, then better to accept. Like, I think, death ultimately come. Whether we like it or not, it will come. This is better for a Buddhist practitioner. I always meditate about death. So it is much easier when actual death come. Because, you see, the many years, or even I think my daily practice, they visualize about death. So it is much sort of psychologically or mentally now much prepared, much prepared. So actually, you see, unfortunate things happen much easier. Then you see those persons who never thought about death, I think deliberately avoid to think or to talk about it. Then actually death comes. I think much difficulties.
So, Your Holiness, is there one of the 8 disciplines that that you think would be good to start us off with?
Perhaps education, culture.
Great. Starting this off will be Dr. Jean Houston. So that we know what we're looking for here, is what is the leading edge or emerging paradigm of thought or practice in your field? Okay, Jean?
Watch. That is. 그래. 죽으려. 죽어도 되잖아. 네? 다 죽었죠.
Holiness, there is a profound new story in the understanding of education and learning. For one thing, there is the scientific understanding and valuing of many different kinds of minds, many different kinds of intelligence. Some people think in images, some people think in words, some people think with their whole bodies, some people think with an intuitive intelligence. Others, perhaps like yourself, Holiness, have what is called street smarts. You know how to make the world work. There is also a profound understanding of the fact that the brain is infinitely malleable, that it can change, and with support and with nourishment and with different styles of learning, there's really no such thing as a stupid child. There's only stupid systems of education. So we find projects all over the world that are gradually getting into the mainstream, slowly but surely, with art as critical to the curriculum. We know, for example, that if you train a child in music and dance, they'll be very good in computers, in mathematics, If you train a child to dramatize, to tell the story of history or of geography, then it gets into their bones, it is embedded. Along with this is this huge multiculturalism, this cultural fusion, so that what is happening is that in the gathering of the understanding, the wisdom of learning from all over the world, what we are doing is that we are increasing the possibilities of deeper, wiser, richer, and more spirited intelligence for all the peoples of the world. And that is what is happening in education.
Just so that, would everybody just say your name as you speak?
Yes. Okay.
And what I want to do is, as soon as you've done this setup, then we'll take it back and flesh it after out a little bit.
Your Holiness, what we are seeing is that the 200 to 300 year long experiment that seems to have come out of the Industrial Revolution of turning schools into factories. Oh, my name is Tom Hartman, by the way. I'm sorry. Brian, you asked me to introduce. That this experiment of making schools work like factories, like assembly lines, and children be items on an assembly line doesn't work. It's failing, and it's wounding and damaging our children, and that it's time to completely rethink education, and in many cases, in many ways, go back to the traditional techniques of education where teachers were mentors rather than factory managers.
So let's tease out this dialectic a bit. So what they've explained, Your Holiness, is that there's a tension between this new story, new approach to the nature of understanding, to the nature of intelligence, and an old system that regards basically schools as factories for the production of people. So that's the tension, and what we want to know about is, in the face of this need for a new way to get at human intelligence, how should we approach that kind of an issue so that we can set up the tension and look at, again, today we're going to be looking at the tensions between those two. So if you have any questions about that or would like to remark about the nature of the problems of education as the new story begins to emerge within it. Jean, maybe you could talk a little bit more about examples of what, some definite examples or evidence in support of the new model of learning.
Well, part of the new model of learning has to do with a school in which all the intelligences are encouraged, so that the child may learn mathematics with rhythm, because rhythm and pattern are right next to each other in the brain. One of the reasons that so many fine mathematicians come out of this area of the world is the nature of the ragas that actually set up different patterns in the brain. The highest scoring science and math people in the world are from Hungary, and they have singing and chorale starting right in the first grade. We talk about teachers becoming mentors, becoming facilitators, becoming evocateurs, and especially in some countries, not all, with computers coming into the classroom. It's very important that teachers be there to model human possibility and to be great evocateurs and witness to a child's intelligence and calling it forth.
Thank you, Jean.
My, impression, right? In modern education, of course, it's like in India, the education system is actually introduced by English, so Western sort of education, modern education.
Which the British abandoned a long time ago in Britain.
So in India, usually they call the secular the secular system. So therefore, they in education, in school, they about the religious sort of teaching or lesson generally not there. Then some time ago, I think when Mrs. Gandhi was there, one occasion I had some discussion with Mrs. Gandhi about the India sort of education system. Particularly, I noticed, you see, in the northern India, the traditionally Buddhist tradition, Buddhist community, but in the education, as a secular sort of education system, no sort of the religious teaching. So result, sometimes you see the parent or the community, sometimes you see they get little sort of dissatisfaction. So I see, because of that, you see some discussion with the Prime Minister, and then later the Prime Minister organize or make one opportunity, some scholars, some professors, some university from Delhi. You see, I had a brief meeting. Then you see those, according to those professors in the university, students from those sort of, class or subject which is more religious study, things like that, less trouble. Then you see student from other sort of field. When you see some students sort of strike or some unrest things happen, you see those students from the class which belong to the class where more religious study, these things are less. So in any way, in modern education, my impression is when in the European continent, when separate education institutions started, 1,000 years ago, when you see the religious authority also was very, very influential. So the brain development is concerned, yes, need some new institution, a new body, but the moral or the ethics side, the church caring, they take care. But then, as time goes, the religious influence decrease. So eventually, the family life also is a little sort of more trouble. So result, nobody take care about the development of warm heart and these things. So therefore, now it is, and then obviously, everywhere you see people always you see sort of talk or doing concerning education, but not pay enough enough attention about the development or sustain of the basic human good qualities. Usually I call spirituality side. So result now here and also I also believe and some you say my sort of friend also have this sharing the same view. In the West, among the student, sometimes you see that there are relations with teachers, also more rebellious sort of attitude, and the teacher side also, you see, I think less sort of genuine compassion towards student. Result, you see, more I think less human affection. So these crimes, killings, or this also you see happening. So you mentioned spirituality and so on. But then again, I feel if we try to introduce religious lesson in school, then again, what religion? More complication. And also basically even among the religious people also sometimes like ourselves also you see sometimes not very healthy. So you see the religious faith teaching as some kind of or subject. Again, I think there is limitation to change human mind, isn't it? We recite some of these holy words, but real influence here sometimes limited, isn't it? So you see, not necessarily as a sort of religious subject, but as I mentioned there, you see, the basic human good qualities or basic human values, not as a religion, but some kind of usually I call secular ethics. Just emphasis. So long we are part of human being, part of humanity, in order to be a happy person, in order to create a happy sort of society, we need such human compassion, sense of caring one another, sense of just sharing one another. You see, look, society is the source of our future, basis of our future. Of course, individual right, individualistic view also is important, but the individual belongs to society. So it takes sense of its concern about the importance of the society, importance of the right of other, or welfare of the other. These things, not as is a religious sort of teaching, not talking about God or nirvana or next life, not talking these things, but simply in order to be a happy person. What do we need? Just education? No. Smart brain, enough? No. You see, smart brain sometimes bring more sort of unhappiness, isn't it? A lot of doubt, a lot of suspicion, a lot of greed, isn't it? So the other side, the source of, I think, discipline, self-discipline, is the source of, I think, inner peace. This is the ultimate source of happiness. So so that is just my sort of usual kasra.
So it's the intelligence of the heart as well.
Oh, did it? Yes, intelligence of the heart. Yes.
I'll give it to you for 30 seconds. It's deeper than the rational, ethical. It's the whole heart. So you could almost say human spirituality.
Human spirituality. Now we create new dictionary, new dictionary word. New terms, yes.
He's always making up new words. We're trying to track him. Well, let's just take one moment and just reflect on what just occurred here. We began with a new story, which is in the opposition of the old structures that regard education as being education to make people productive, but not necessarily happy. That things like having a peace room would be one way to begin to advance that forward so we can change the nature of our educational experience. Then His Holiness brought in the importance of moral education, but that in itself has its own problems, yes, its own contradictions, which is how do we get moral instruction in secular schools without looking at a religious tradition to provide that for? So those are some of the tensions that we might be working with this week. So rather than having final answers to those, that will feed our discussions. Thank you, Your Holiness. That was great. So is there a second one you think we should move to?
No, business and economics.
All right. We're ready for some work. And from business and economics, we have Myron Kellner-Rogers, who's going to start off. And again, we'll hear what's the leading edge, what's it fighting against, and what's a right action.
Good morning. Your Holiness, yesterday when we spoke in my group about this subject, which is our field, business and economics, we felt in some ways quite pessimistic, so it's wonderful having you here today. I feel very hopeful again. One of the reasons we feel... One of the reasons that we felt pessimistic is that in the field of organizations, of business, of economics, what you spoke about today, that we no longer believe, we think in our society, we no longer believe that the institutions that we created together are capable of bringing us the future we created them for. And that this is a very troubling time in which, while we know that, two things are going on. We're participating in keeping those institutions moving down a path of materialism and being very successful at that. On those terms, our business institutions have been extremely successful. And simultaneously, we're abandoning our institutions, looking for ways of joining with one another that actually honor who we are capable of honoring all of who we are as human beings. So we've been troubled in our group. We don't actually see a leading edge emerging right now in business. There's an awful lot of contradiction. There's the contradiction of great success in materialism. There's the contradiction of incredible human spirit arising and organizing in very different forms than in the past. In terms of thought, yeah. Okay. In terms of thought that's out there that might help us lead in a new direction, we've looked at living systems, the new sciences of life, although it's interesting that the science of machines is what got us into this predicament. We're now looking at the science of life as a way of helping us understand a different way of organizing ourselves. So, David?
Yes, in terms of perhaps the most one of the very major barriers to the emergence of a new consciousness in a world that works for all are the institutions of business and finance that we now find are functioning beyond human control. And these institutions, unfortunately, value life only in terms of its capacity for making money. Now, the other pernicious aspect is that these institutions these institutions are able to provide lavish financial rewards to those who supposedly lead them, but in fact work only for them. And the very institutions involved are specifically designed to strip decisions of any human sensibility. So you're rewarded solely for your contribution to the bottom line. If you bring in other values, you are rejected from the institution. And of course, these are the institutions that control our media and the means of cultural reproduction.
Yes.
They're insinuating themselves into our schools, and they dominate our politics.
Yes.
And here's what I think becomes so central to our discussion here. If we're to have a world that works for all, we must change those institutions. But in order to be able to change them, we must ourselves get sufficiently clear on our internal values so that we can break free of our obsessions with money and our dependence on the rewards that those institutions give us to forget our humanity.
So the picture that you've painted so far is that there's a great deal of conflict between the fact that we've created powerful institutions that are beyond the control of individuals, that basically reward profit-producing activity in a way that so far you're expressing a great deal of frustration about in terms of our capacity to change, because the rewards are so great, and those who would assert spiritual values basically are excluded from those institutions. That's a pretty clear dialectic between the spiritual moral values and that profit motive. So, in terms of this very difficult conflict in which those who are trying to reform business models find themselves between human suffering and personal responsibility for that, and the need to bring spiritual values into the marketplace, and the frustration of having institutions that seem beyond reform because we've created institutions in an economic system that individuals seem powerless to change. Would you like to comment on that? It's a very large ball to toss in your direction, but...
Usually, you see, the spirituality or the like a compassion or human affection in business world looks less relevant. But if you look I think the events of this century, 20th century, now why the socialist theories come. You see, they saw the too much unequal, some rich and poor, and exploitation. So they keeping thinking they profit, but the way getting profit or using profit more equal. So this idea of the socialism, you see, happen. Then I think in the past, I think up to now, those socialist society or country, I feel the distribution, the idea of distribution, I think come from regulation way. Regulation or some, I think the external means, not volunteer basis. So result, in any way, some kind of corruptions, and sometimes you see the people unwanted things happen. So then no further progress, the stagnations, these things just happen. So now here is how to, but at the same time, the purely the capitalist way of development. Now, my I think here my attitude or my concept may be influenced by some of the Marxist ideology, so may not be correct, which I learned in 50s. Still, I believe some of the Marxist ideology, the concerning about the poor, the right of the poor, right of the less privileged people, working class people. Maybe you see, maybe sort of my view may be little biased, could be, but in any way, we can see, like the global level, the huge gap, rich and poor, and then within the nation, again gap, rich and poor. So you see, this gap, not only just morally, this is wrong. Not this is just a moral issue, but practical issue. Some nations remain poor. Some nations luxury sort of surplus sort of economic situation. Then you see, I think a genuine friendship difficult. Genuine mutual trust also difficult. So you see, some, I think the advanced nations talk or saying or showing genuine concern about the environment. For example, the depletion of the ozone layer, these things. Then the poorer nations may not, they may feel or don't care. So that kind of a problem. Eventually, humanity, whole humanity suffer. Unless genuine sort of, I think, cooperation worldwide. But in order to bring that, some satisfaction here, isn't it? So the gap, poor and rich, this, I think, implication or repercussion for other, I think, bigger issues also, I think, there. Then within the nation, the rich family, I was told, my friend in America, now I think 20 years ago, the number of billionaire 17 or something. Now today 40, more than 40 or something.
477.
Billionaire. How much? How many?
It's somewhere around 405, 400.
Oh. So you see the number of billionaire increasing. Poor people still remain poor, sometimes even worse. So look at New York or some other places. Although it's some area, rich people, they have a house or everything, very lavish, beautiful. But they have sort of life in real sense, I think, constant threat or some kind of risk, sense of insecurity. In the section of the poorer people, more crime. Why? Of course, there's some because of the frustration. How? A lot of unequal. In economy, money matter, too much gap, then those poorer people, the education also suffer, health also suffer. So career in the public, career in the public also suffer. So result, the whole society not very peaceful. So the rich people, billionaire also, they're also part of the society. When the society as a whole not very peaceful, then these rich people also suffer. So it's thinking. So therefore, if we, each sort of, even if these billionaires, the billionaires, I think, the rich people, if they look their own sort of, I think, the annual sort of profit, increasing profit, they may get some kind of satisfaction. That's not I think not sufficient, not enough. They are part of the human society, and also I think moreover they have more responsibility, important part of the society, isn't it? If they make some contribution. So similarly, they have better position or more potential in certain sense. So therefore, they have, if they their you see attitude whitened, then they can see this huge gap really sort of source of problem. This is not just as a moral issue, but practical issue. This is the source of problem. So therefore, you see, they have to think how to reduce this without damaging, making profit. So some time ago, I met one Indian businessman, a business family from Bombay. They just want some kind of blessing from me. Then I told, I have nothing. I said, bless.
No power to bless you.
Oh, I have nothing. But blessing must come from within. Then I asked that lady, you are a rich family, very fortunate. So they use capitalist method, making more profit. Then from the profit, with the profit, you see, follow socialism. Socialist method, more contribution for poorer people, more distribution for poorer people in health or in education. So they using capitalist method, dynamic sort of method to create, to increase more money, but from that money, you see, not used for individual or individual families' luxurious sort of life, have no use. In any case, even rich people, billionaire, same size of stomach, same size of the body, and nothing. Isn't it? If you see one billionaire, you see where I think the 10 diamond sort of ring, right? 10 diamond ring. Oh, looks not nice. Too much, isn't it? One or two here, very beautiful. Each, if you see 10 rings, right? Each finger 10 rings, oh, then mad. Looks like, oh, isn't it? So I think the rich people, I think too much sort of, I think the variety of food or drink, these things, I think damage, I think very bad for body health, isn't it? So therefore, your money, there's a limit. You have the limitless money, but to use for what should I say? I think for what say the way of proper use. There's a limit for oneself, isn't it? No. So therefore, judging from that, it is only way distribution. For without damaging your economic situation, more distribution for the society. So that's, I think, the moral ethics. Moral ethic not come from, you see, the believe God or believe in next reincarnation, things like that. Not that way. But simply, you see, the whole society is our home, our basis, our future, basis of our future. So from the I think from one scientist, from my scientific field, how much contribution for the betterment of society. A religious person, not these some Christian missionary workers, they always is thinking about conversion. That's, I think, outdated. So I always emphasize the conversion or propagate one's own religion, one's own religious faith is not healthy. It's not good. But thinking, say, how much contribute from my religion to the society, isn't it? We are one. I mean, same line. So similarly, a businessman, their background, from their profession, how much I can contribute for the betterment of society. I think thinking this line, then this is not from regulation, not from external sort of law or some other government sort of force, but the I think volunteer contribution on the basis of realization of awareness. Otherwise, I have no idea. One way, you see, the socialism always failure. So-called this socialism. And in India also, the socialism through democracy, that also failure. And all the communist countries, the socialism, very smart idea, and in real practice, because of that, I mean, terrible, too much suppression, too much restrictions. Result, no progress. And meantime, the capitalist money is growing, but there's, I think, unnecessary problem or suffering because of the inequality.
Thank you, Your Holiness. So, to draw again what that dialectic appears to be, and I'm looking at Sulak on this right now, it's part of the tension is between personal moral responsibility and the imperative for changing systemic structures that create human suffering. And His Holiness had made the suggestion of adding a ninth spoke to the wheel, and that is right distribution, as well as right action, right distribution. So that's another tension that we'll be exploring this week, is between personal responsibility and how much personal ethics within the business world can actually cause a systemic change, and what kind of changes within the system we need to do. So, Your Holiness, is there a next category that we should move to?
No, you should choose one.
You would have to be an enlightened master to make a politically acceptable decision here, but I'd like to suggest that we move to the next related one, which is environment and sustainability, because I think it's very much related to business and economics. But I'd like to ask that we that we make this as truncated as we can so that we can, by 12:30 or so, try to move around the wheel as much as possible. So from Environment and Sustainability, Stephanie Kaza is going to begin by describing the emerging paradigm.
Thank you, Your Holiness. In the leading edges of our field, environment and sustainability, there is a growing consciousness that all beings are alive and experiencing their worlds with myriad intelligences in a dynamic, complex, interdependent, and relational world. This represents a significant shift for the Western world from a view of the natural world as inert and dead to a view of the world as conscious and alive, from a view of people as separate from nature to a view based on whole systems thinking about the fate of the earth. This deep ecological consciousness is manifesting now very strongly in the movements for organic agriculture, species conservation, ecosystem protection, religion and ecology, among others, inspiring hundreds and thousands of people to live more compassionate lives.
My name is Dwayne Elgin. Your Holiness, we see three major resistances to seeing the universe as an interrelated living system. The first is old science that looks out onto the world and sees it as dead, as composed of small pieces instead of an integrated living whole. The second is big business that exploits what it sees as a dead universe on behalf of the profits of a few people. The third is the mass media, television in particular, that hypnotizes people into thinking that we do live in a dead universe, that our happiness comes from what we consume.
I'm Vicki Robin. Your Holiness, right action in light of these realities and also the realities that have already been discussed. I think the first is, in the United States, is what we call walking the talk. I don't know if you know that term, but it's living in integrity. It's not only in a self-punitive way, in a self-castigating way of I should behave differently because of these realities, but also out of a deep and growing love for our connection with the natural world and understanding that we really are one and that we are nourished and inspired by the natural world. And out of that love and compassion, we are finding that every choice that we make on a daily basis must be made in light of that reality. And consequently, as we do that, our consumption of the reality around us, of the living world, drops precipitously the more conscious we become. Drops quickly, the more conscious we become and the more grateful we become for our connection. And the second right action that we thought about was communication. That in the mass story of a dead world, people are fearful of really talking about their deep caring for their own lives and for the rest of life. They're really fearful about talking about their changes.
So, would you like to add to that?
So, Your Holiness, it has been suggested that there's a model of a living, completely interdependent universe as against a dead universe, which can be exploited by business for profit and cynically. If you would respond to that, do you feel yourself, from your point of view, that there is evidence that can be explained perhaps outside of a religious context that supports the notion that there is a living universe that's integrated at all levels? Or how would you respond to the notion of this emerging model of the living universe in the West?
My way of approach about the environment is not necessarily it's a compassionate attitude towards the nature itself. Of course, the one practitioner on the individual basis as a Buddhist, then of course they respect other form of life and should have the same attitude towards these animals, others, and then is the environment, vegetations, these things also you see the home of these insects or these other sentient being. So therefore, from that perspective, you see out of compassion, out of the sense of respect to this nature environment. That is the more on individual basis, more religious ethics. Then is my main approach. I feel, as I mentioned earlier, without religious faith, then or secular ethics. Human spirituality. Now, from that perspective,
He's good.
from that perspective, now whether you say world or nature, dead or living, it is our home, isn't it? And you see, there is no other home, only this. We are talking about Mars, settlement on Mars or some other plane, but of course you see huge expense, because of huge expensive one. So this is the only home. Then other thing, as we already mentioned, this is a gap, rich and poor. According some expert about nature resources, then according them, the Southerners, if their living standard raise up to the same living standard which northern world enjoying, then under present human population, the nature resources then coming
cannot sustain.
Questionable whether sufficient or not. So the nature resources also is a limit. Limitation is there. So therefore, judging from that, you have to take care about environment. It's only home, and it is becoming weak. So we have the responsibility. Other animals, they have no ability to take care about the world. We humanity suppose more more advanced, sort of intelligent, more sort of ability. So we have the responsibility to take care about nature. And ultimately, we are also part of nature. If nature, including climate, dramatic change, because due to human behavior, ultimately we will suffer. So these, I feel, they mainly because of short-sightedness, right? Short-sightedness, just as thinking about immediate profit, immediate sort of benefit, then ignore the long run. Sometimes I think knowing that, but it's too much sort of desire, right? Or greed. So in spite of knowing the long-term negative consequences, but just carrying some immediate immediate profit like that. So that's my main thinking or way of approach about environment issues. So I think education, awareness, and
I wasn't cutting you off. Well, since the finger has been pointed at science as being one of the causes, or at least certain models of science. Perhaps we can move next some of our scientific group to see what they have to say in terms of new paradigms about which they have a lot of thoughts.
But also, you see, I think if the amount of damaging the environment because of the technology or substance, the chemicals, these things, these won't also come from the scientists. So some of these, scientists are also helpful to getting deeper awareness about the environment problem, isn't it? So little difference for scientists.
Well, they're friendly scientists.
Yes.
We brought only friendly scientists. And this is Fred Allen Wolf, who will begin us.
Your Holiness, Western science has, I believe, taken us into the art of separation to such an extreme that we are ready to implode into unity.
Oh, yes. Yes.
The rules of science, based on the idea that complex matter, life, and consciousness emerge from simple, non-conscious matter, possibly even dead matter, is at best incomplete.
Yes.
The emerging new paradigm is attempting to expand the rules of science. For example, we may be looking at how the simple emerges from the complex. We may be looking at models which explain how mind and matter emerge from a deeper, paradoxical, living and non-living ground of being. We are looking at other possibilities, particularly in the field of quantum physics, which indicate alternate or parallel universes existing side by side with ours and affecting ours. And we may be looking at time reversal, how the future influences the present. Life and mind may be organizing principles of matter, and consciousness may be the basis for the physical and biological sciences.
And this is Amit Goswami.
Your Holiness, the opposition to this view, the leading edge, basically comes from three directions. One is quite legitimate, namely, if we don't have objectivity, then how can we do science? But the other two are based on fear. One fear that is very substantial among scientists is the fear of what cannot be dealt with by rational means, mainly mathematics and rational arguments. This fear of irrational phenomenon, what they consider irrational, such as the paranormal, even spiritual faith is considered irrational. This fear of the irrational has become irrational fear in the minds of many scientists. The third, and perhaps the most important reason for the reaction, for the opposition, seems to be a fundamental conflict, a tension that exists within each one of us. This tension is the tension between ego and some greater unity self, a move towards separateness and versus a move towards unity that we all have individually, including all scientists. And the fourth one that can be given is that there is a reluctance in terms of acknowledging free will or consciousness as a causal entity, because if we do that, then we have to take responsibility for our actions. We have to change, we have to transform, even though we are scientists. And these scientists are not very prepared to do right now.
Cliff Matthews. There are three of us going to give... Sorry.
Cliff Matthews, whose field is origin of life.
There are three of us who are going to give brief statements about what kind of action we might be taking, Your Holiness. Now, in our evolving universe, which we see as participatory, transcendent, and open, we want to explore further the ultimate mystery of existence, not only through science, but equally through art and religion. And these creative activities, of course, art and science and religion, give rise to the metaphors, models, and myths by which we live. You might even say that they are all different ways of telling lies to get at the truth. They are lies that tell the truth. So I...
yes.
But beyond all that, I think above all that, we are just grateful for our being. We want to pursue further community by giving and receiving love. So very briefly then, I'll say what we need is more living, lying, and loving.
Yes. Yes.
And this is Elizabeth Sartoris, who's a biologist, evolutionary biologist.
Your Holiness, the practice and teaching of science has not included the wisdom of the heart. And so now we as scientists have to try to find the wisdom of the heart in order to be of service to humanity and not an authority to it. And each of us as scientists will have to learn how to find the wisdom of the heart within ourselves, to see the tensions in science, and to learn to hold those tensions within us until they dissolve, but at the same time to recognize that in nature, tension is the source of all creativity, and that biology, nature tells us diversity is absolutely essential, and that every part must be fully participating. Our own bodies show us that a few organs cannot exploit the rest and stay healthy. We must undo the barriers between these opposites so that we can learn how every cell can have self-interest and also the body. Self-interest is all right if it's contained in community. So if we can find that kind of wisdom in ourselves as individual people, as well as in the great mother teacher of nature, I think we will be able to be in service to the world much better than we have been.
Yes, absolutely.
I told you these were friendly scientists, so so the tension between what Elizabeth was calling the wisdom of the heart and also the learning of science, the teaching, it as a way of getting the information that we need. I wonder if you could comment on that emergence and what you see in terms of the changes in the scientific community, because I know you've been in dialogue with the scientific community for many years.
No particular thing to response. Of course, I had, I think, some experience dealing with scientists. I don't know. Generally, it's my impression as a scientist, if someone who genuinely scientific-minded then you see that he or she is an attitude very neutral. Should be neutral. I mean, very neutral and unbiased and skeptical. I think that's very right. Very good. And carry is a further investigation, experiment. Then through experiment, through investigation, the truth eventually become clear. Then you accept. That's a very right of approach. I think I personally, I'm Buddhist. It's a Buddhist way of approach. Also, is basically similar. At the beginning, some kind of skeptical, even Buddha's own word. Remain little skeptical. Then investigate and experiment. And then eventually, through one's own experience, some benefit comes. Then accept. Then perhaps I think that to scientists, up to now, I think the coverage of science and science field may not be, I think, a whole phenomena. My feeling. Up to now, I think the field where usually it is the megaphone. 자자가 럽다. 안데 지금 천리기 딱제 천리 럽지잖아요. 폐지 차야 요데보다 지금 measurement 자유도 그렇지. 근데 저는 그래서 지야요.
The present field of investigation of science, His Holiness feels, is more or less limited because they primarily engage in focus in a limited area which can be measured and which can be calculated.
So I think you see, maybe I think worthwhile have some kind of openness. Further, there are some different sort of phenomena which present up-to-date sort of method to investigate may not sort of sufficient or ability, may not have the ability to investigate in certain particular field. So this is, of course, I think mainly some say I think deeper consciousness or certain level of, say I think the spiritual experiences. You see, through normal scientific way, we can't prove. But also, you see, we can see some result or some effectiveness of such experience. So there is something. Yet, I think beyond to explain through usual scientific way means. So perhaps I think to scientists, I think more openness with skeptical. That is very good. So sometimes I found some scientists about the relation between brain and mind. They believe every sort of thought or mind must come from some the part of the brain. Then I put the question: according to our experiences, our daily experiences, sometimes just because of the vague memory about something past, it's just a memory, and then that causing some emotions that affects our body. So this looks, thought come first, or memory come first, then effect on the brain. It looks like that. So I put this question. Then you see some physician, some scientist say, oh, looks like that, but should not. You see, because you see, every thought must be based on brain. So oneself makes some kind of the limitation. And anyway, you see, I think scientist or science is something like, I think, the refuge of Sharda. Yep. What's it?
Like source of evidence.
So it is very important, very important.
Yes. And
then I think here, I think one is a scientist, one great scientist. The Quran means Quran Chile truth, Argentine truth. One tutor, a teacher of the Francisco Varela. Yes, he's his teacher. I think one Chilean, or he lived in Brazil. Oh yes, yes. That's right. A few months ago, I was in Argentina. Oh, Brazil. Some sort of seminar. He also there. So he mentioned being as a scientist, when he or she carry, investigation, or as a person, they should not have attachment towards one's own field. And he mentioned, once attachment comes, then your mind becomes biased. I think this is absolutely true. Yes. Whether scientist or whether religious person, like myself as a Buddhist, if I develop some kind of attachment towards my own religion, then this automatically, closed your sort of, I think the objective sort of attitude towards other religion, other field, isn't it? If my Christian brother, there's too much attachment towards your own religion, Catholicism, then he can't see the value of Buddhism. So I think that when I heard that, I really
greatly amazed.
I amazed, when I heard, and also I got some kind of new lesson. Oh, it is really true. I'm Buddhist. I should not have attachment towards my own religion. So that's I think wonderful, isn't it?
Well, I'd like to see if we can squeeze in one more before we break. I know that you have lunch coming up, and I don't want to hold you up too much for that. Good.
Yes.
Once it is, if His Holiness is willing, that we do all the spokes of the all of the spokes, so we cover them all, so we have some holistic understanding. If you're willing to do that.
칼라도 양초벌에 주차가 야노 가지고. 칼라 주차가 야나. At our lunch, I think can postpone. Right.
Extended maybe half an hour.
1 o'clock.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. We just expanded
Yes.
the universe.
Yes.
Very powerful already. Okay. Well, then I'd like to move perhaps. Well, if you have something in mind, I was thinking about the media and the arts, perhaps next.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And we'll begin with Fran Corton, who's the puppet. We'll begin with Michael Toms, I mean.
Your Holiness, one of the things that's happening in the media, in the arts, but particularly the media, is that new technologies are emerging. Many new technologies that make communications possible that weren't possible before. And as you wrote in your book, Ethics for a New Millennium, the media has a responsibility. And this responsibility is very important as these new technologies emerge. But an example of what I'm talking about is that as these new technologies emerge, they are less expensive, they are more available, they're more accessible to more people. So that right now, your words are being heard all over the world on the internet. Now, this wasn't possible. It's now possible. And it's relatively simple. And we didn't have to ask for permissions from governments or get licenses. It's like we didn't have to go to Rupert Murdoch, or we didn't have to go to Bill Gates. We're just doing it. And this means that the opportunity exists to put out communications to the world, not just information, but the possibility of communicating wisdom. And it's that challenge that if we can bring greater awareness to these new technologies. I mean, the real challenge for us in the media and in communications is to have a greater awareness, to be able to realize that what we're doing is attempting to serve people and not manipulate them, but to empower and enlighten and inspire with the good news.
Right.
wonderful. 수지는 가지시고 마셔요.
My name is Frances Corton. Your Holiness, I speak now to the dark side of this myriad of technological possibilities that our age presents us with. At the structural level, we see that the biggest streams of media are controlled increasingly by fewer and fewer organizations, global corporations, who are using the power of those technologies to project images so compelling to every corner of the earth that send a message that the way to live your life is to pursue an insatiable quest for material well-being. And in the pursuit of that path, destruction follows. At the individual level,
yes.
At the individual level, we also see the dark side of the use of these technologies as people communicate in their pursuit of guns and violence, portraying pornography across the planet, projecting hate talk that incites violence. And even in the good communications, the kinds that Michael speak of, we see the danger of being overwhelmed with an inundation of information that inhibits our capacities for reflection and wisdom.
Namaste, Your Holiness. I'm Russell Paul. I'm an artist, and as artists, we work closely with the media. The media, as you've heard, has so much of power with the technology available today. And art also has so much of power to influence people. And when both art, media come together, there's so much of power. And a lot of what happens today, because of the technology we have and the power available through that, is first of all to produce much quantity of artistic things, so the quality sometimes goes down. Secondly, as artists, we express the deep feelings, not only the joy and happiness, but also the pain. And as a result of which, a lot of artists express much of the pain going on, and it feeds back, the hatred, the pain feeds back, instead of it being the other way around. We have little imbalance there. So our question to you is, what is your advice? What is your thoughts on people involved with the arts and people involved with media? How should we conduct ourselves? What should we do to be able to be responsible for being like the carrier waves of consciousness in a way, with the ability to affect people deeply?
Of course, that it depends on the person, right? The person, the true, the dire, kaso This kim doga ta kada misos sem moji we ba kaso expression those time, but the question sir.
It is but natural that it is very clear, and it's but natural that when you are mentally unhappy, you express that unhappiness.
Oh. And then also is it difficult where the person or the artist or singer, for example, singer or the poetry, or is it he or she, is it the whole sort of mood, not happy one, then of course the expression accordingly is to come. And you see, and also is it difficult, the person's inner feeling unhappy, then meantime try to express some happiness. That's artificial, no good, and may not be so effective. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I think the artist as a human being is sometimes happy, sometimes unhappy. It's quite natural. Then perhaps I think the only way, when you are happy, then use as the artist work more on you are happy. Then your expression will be more positive. When you unhappy, then close your door and do some silence meditations. Otherwise, you see, we can't I think, stop these unhappy things. And also the expression of the deep feeling also is automatically come. Otherwise, I have nothing to say. I have no the technique.
Holiness has no particular technique to mention.
We were just wanting to know how the media and the arts could keep a sense of the holistic in the new as we move on.
Yes, of course, very, very important. Very, very important. But here, I think this is sometimes you see people like in India. You see, my Indian friend, you see, usually sort of express the Western culture sort of invasion. But then my response for that, it is foolish. Try to stop that. But rather, you see, they make clear, make deeper awareness about one's own the traditional value, rich cultural heritage. Once you have your own sort of cultural heritage become clear, and have some some positive experience come from your own cultural heritage. Once you have the conviction, yes, my cultural heritage provide us some meaningful life, then of course the other cultural heritage is enjoy as entertainment. But there's no harm. If your own side weak, then the external influence can easily invade. So I think some of those totalitarian regimes, I think, method, I feel this is very foolish. If you see your own sort of ideology, your own system, really, you see, have sort of strength, then make clear. Then meantime, let have all other informations. Then people themselves will judge which is better, which is sort of more controversial. Your own side weak, and in the meantime try to stop other. Cannot success, and foolish way. So media, of course, I think you mentioned, you see, I think negative side also. I think that's every field, everywhere, negative side, positive side, always there. I think only thing is make clear both negative. I usually do, for example, some of the certain thing which is related with Buddhism or Tibetan Buddhist tradition. I always try to make it clear. There are some negative things also there, some corruptions, some bad things also there, and then also some good things also there. This is much better. So that the information manipulated. I think the negative information, killing or sex or all these scandal, usually I sharing with the media people, usually all these negative things become news. True, it is news, become news because I think basic human nature is, as we mentioned, is more positive. Therefore, killing, raping, bullying, these things happen. It little shock, so it becomes news. They sort of taking care of the old people, taking care of young children, things like that, we take for granted. So not become news. So the news, media people, all those events which become something, something striking, something news, then reported. So eventually, the people eventually getting the impression, oh, human nature is negative. So then lose this sort of determination or hope. So the more balanced presentation. Yes, there are violence, there are negative things, many bad things there. But at the same time, there are also the good things. So we can prove, we can transform bad into good. Then of course artists, I always admire the artist. You have, I think, the technique, through that technique or media to reach a certain message to millions of people, larger audience. So very important, very important sort of role.
Okay, well, we just have a couple of more to go. I'd like to invite the people from politics and governance to speak. And maybe, would it be easiest if we had the remaining groups, which are governance and community, spirituality and religion, and healing and medicine, maybe all go now, and then His Holiness could comment, so we make sure that we get all those pieces in?
Good.
That'd be all right?
Very good.
Okay. Mrs. Corinne McLaughlin.
Your Holiness. Well, in the West, the leading edge really expresses in three different areas that we see very clearly. The first is to re-engage our citizens in their own democracy and to eliminate the corrupting influence of money in policymaking. The second is a shift in thinking from adversarial politics to multi-stakeholder dialogues that brings all the parties to the table, all the views, and finds common ground and a higher synthesis again, among the differences. It's learning to deeply listen to other views. And thirdly, an area that's most important to us is opening public discourse to explore the deeper spiritual causes of problems, political problems. To look at the collective lessons that we're learning from political events. What are we collectively learning? And to make our public policy and our decision-making be based on universal spiritual values, the ethics, the things we have in common. We actually have more in common than we have differences.
And this is Gordon Davidson.
Your Holiness, it's interesting that politics was one of the last subjects we get to, because in many ways politics is the one subject that most people don't really want to talk about. Because in a way we're disgusted with the process. Leaders today are causing untold suffering for billions of people on this planet. We all know that. And techniques of using the media for manipulation, for deceit, for confusing the people rather than telling them the truth are rife in politics. 65% of the American people no longer vote because they are so disgusted with the process. This is a victory for the untruth. And it is extremely important that we develop a new kind of politics. The solutions that we see are in three areas. Spirituality needs to be recognized as something that transcends religion, as you have so clearly stated. In addition, we need new processes that help people work through their differences, learning how to see the grain of truth in their opponent's point of view, learning detachment from their own point of view. And finally, I think a fundamental issue is recognition, learning how to recognize the true leaders who have the spiritual awareness, who have the commitment to the good of all the people, who deeply care about what happens to the people they are leading. This awareness will come when we develop those qualities within ourselves. As the public develops that consciousness, we will only select those types of leaders. We are moving in that direction.
Yeah, or something.
Then we're going to talk about the field of healing and medicine.
The resistances to this, I'm John Mack, the resistance to this apply mainly to the West, but to the East too, insofar as the East embraces Western medicine wholeheartedly. There are three dimensions I want to speak of in this resistance. The first has to do with worldview. A worldview organizes individuals and a society. In the case of the West, the Western worldview now, anthropocentric humanism or anthropocentric rationalism, as philosopher Michael Zimmerman at Tulane has spoken of it, separates the body from spirit. It sees the brain as the source of consciousness. It fragments the care of people by separating the different dimensions of the specialties. Mind, body is separated in all of the approaches. Second is the epistemology or way of knowing that follows from that. We know through experiment, through so-called objective-subjective separation, but the fact is this rules out full experiential knowing. If we use only measurement as the way of knowing, only that which can be verified, which is very important for Western medicine, but it excludes the full range of human capabilities for knowing which the spirit of the person has. And the third area is the vested interests. There are huge vested interests in avoiding, resisting change. And they're of two kinds. One is what I mentioned, the psychological vested interest in keeping it the same way because we feel afraid we'll lose control if we change that paradigm, if we open up the way we see reality. And the other very important vested interest is the huge economic and political vested interest in keeping the system the way it is. The specialties in medicine, the huge pharmacological enterprises, the whole medical surgical establishment which deeply and strongly resists all of these new changes.
And we're coming to our last round, which is religion and spirituality. We have someone you may know. So you may have some idea what's coming. But Wayne will begin by talking about the emerging paradigm.
Okay.
And then we'll bring things to a conclusion.
Okay.
You've been very, very patient with us, and thank you for taking the extra time.
So the emerging cutting-edge synthesis, I think, in religion and spirituality is the realization that the real religion of humanity isn't religion at all, but spirituality. Spirituality is the common ground that we have. Spirituality as commitment to spiritual practice and living out the virtues, compassion, love, kindness, mercy, taking a stand for justice. And that when one lives out of spirituality, it frees us, liberates us, so that we explore other traditions of spirituality, and we become what can be said interspiritual beings. That I can learn from you as I have, and you can learn from me and from others. And then the realization that there is a universal tradition of wisdom that belongs to each one of us, dependent only on our capacity to receive it and our generosity to explore it. And I think an example, if I can give an example of synthesis, for instance, between Buddhism and all the traditions that have experience of the divine, something like the divine as womb or matrix of dependent arising. This is something we need to explore. And I think another example is the synthesis between mysticism or spirituality and action, which we see so eloquently in that brilliant example of Gandhi here in India, and many others. And I think a final point is that to show that synthesis is possible among spiritual traditions is the fruit it produces in the lives of their practitioners. So a Buddhist saint, a Christian saint, a Muslim saint, they have the same qualities: holiness, kindness, mercy, compassion.
Wonderful.
This is Reverend Michael Beckwith.
Thank you, Wayne. Your Holiness, as Wayne was saying, as this exploration into mysticism deepens and individuals begin to appreciate the living essence that's within all religions, what's rising up, paradoxically, of course, is a rising sense of fundamentalism. As the old structures are breaking down, individuals living out of fear, doubt, and worry are rising up with a kind of a cult-like thinking of saying things like, we are the only one, or we are the chosen ones. And it behooves us to look within ourselves and eliminate the we-them consciousness that embraces the fear and allows us that to be neutralized. So the resistance is fundamentalism that is judgmental, has a tendency to persecute, and it's based on the feeling that everything is breaking down, that the old systems are falling down, which they are, in order to give rise to this sense of oneness or this sense of unity or this sense of belonging that we're all speaking of.
So we've gone around the wheel. I think we've covered all the spaces, even if not each one of us has spoken. Yes. Yes.
And we also discussed the fact that as a part of our spiritual tradition, as a point of action, we should consciously research and learn to appreciate other people's religion as a part of our spiritual practice. Not from a sense of obligation, but as a part of our spiritual walk. That should be something that we should be about.
Now, if I can take this opportunity, we've set the table to lay the foundation for our work, and I really appreciate it, and I think I can say that on behalf of all of us, the tremendous insight that you've given, and I think you've stimulated our thinking and created a field, I think, of permission and openness for us to explore maybe beyond where we've been comfortable. So on behalf of all of us, thank you so much for your time with us today. Would you care to say anything before we take a break for lunch?
I think another occasion, tomorrow. Day after tomorrow, yes. Day after tomorrow.
Yes.
So then I have to reserve something to say next day. Thank you. Thank you. I very much appreciate. Thank you. Thank you. Then see you again. I think day after tomorrow. Day after tomorrow.
Yes.
Thank you. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye.